Hello everybody, welcome to the Hills Quarry Products dig site in Cerney Wick. Now we have got an amazing dig going on here. We've got material from both the Ice Age and the Jurassic. And with me is Palaeontologist Richard Forrest. Hello Richard.
That's right.
Now Richard, you have brought something to show us. Is this Ice Age? Is this Jurassic? What are we looking at here? We'll get the camera in, come and have a look at this. Right, so what have we got?
Well, this is a fairly nondescript looking piece of bone which Nev found on the first day of the dig. Showed it to me and I said, that is a plesiosaur coracoid.
A plesiosaur? Oh,
Right.
wow.
Plesiosaurs are the long-necked marine reptiles which were quite common during the Jurassic. And this is bone from basically from the shoulder girdle.
Right. Can you show me where that would
That's
be
right,
then, a
yeah,
shoulder
yeah,
girdle? So
yeah.
we've got a
Plesiosaurs had shoulder girdles very unlike ours. They were basically a big flat plate of bone going right across the middle of the body with the things, the limbs attached to it.
right.
So
Okay.
this is from the midline of the body. That's
Right.
the midline. So this would have been extending this way and that out that way. Big
Okay.
fragment, very recognisable.
So how is that recognisable then? Talk us through what sort of...
What makes it recognisable is, first of all, it's the shape of that V shape there, because another bone sort of hits that, and then you form a V-shaped belly effectively.
Right.
The pieces here which are broken off, there's a little bit of rim there, so we know there was what we call a foramen there, a hole there, which we know is formed by the scapula and the clavicle which sit here, which then joins up to the bit from the coracoid that comes out from there.
Right. Okay.
And then we know there's another bit going backwards, which was a very exciting find because we really I like plesiosaurs, they're my speciality.
So these are carnivorous.
These are carnivorous, long-necked machine reptiles, probably mainly fish eaters, belemnites, the squid-like animals that lived during the same time. I think some of them fed on ammonites who had teeth big enough to get through
So
the shells.
that corresponds with the amount of ammonites, belemnites, and everything we're finding
that's
in there.
right.
We found their prey.
This is one of the animals feeding on it.
Right.
So finding that coracoid was very exciting. However,
It gets better.
it gets better.
It gets better.
3 days later, Kieran found another piece of nondescript bone from the Jurassic.
Look at this.
And that is another piece of plesiosaur coracoid. So, you can see it's got exactly the same shape.
Look at that. Yes.
And when I looked at that, I thought, that fits this.
Oh my goodness.
So when we see there, the two bits fit together perfectly.
And were they found in the same area?
They were found in a similar area, a few meters apart. But what is very exciting about this is not just we have a plesiosaur, but also that we have what we call an associated skeleton. Now, we generally thought that what we find in the Ice Age bones we find in the river deposits are basically just a random collection of bones. It's a few ones that came down and we washed down the stream and so on. But this seems to be coming from a single individual.
Oh, that's exciting.
Which means we have much more chance of finding more plesiosaur bones to start with, which are always a good thing. Plesiosaurs are the most fascinating animals of all. Forget dinosaurs. So,
yes, because they are not dinosaurs, are they?
they are not dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are just big dead chickens who wandered around on land doing their things, while the interesting animals were living in the sea. And the interesting animals are the plesiosaurs, like this one, like the marine crocodile we found last year, which is extraordinary. And we found other bits. We found bits of ichthyosaurs, some of the other big marine reptiles. We found quite a lot of this piece of croc now. We found croc vertebra. I'm saying croc rather than crocodile because my paleontology friends said they're not crocodiles, they're crocodilo-forms.
Okay, because they are very different in
they're very
age,
different in body plan and everything else. They are all part of the same group, so I call them crocs. But these are, technically speaking, thalattosuchians, which means crocodiles went back into the sea. Thalattosuchian basically means sea crocodile.
There's a word to repeat.
So that's right.
Yeah.
And these animals became much more adapted to living in water than any modern crocodile. They in some cases lost most of their body armour. They had their limbs turned into paddles. They had a tail with a fluke like a fish, and probably spent nearly all their life in water. And sometimes also, when you look at the skull shape of some of them, they didn't just do what modern crocodiles do, which is lurk at the surface. We think of crocodiles as living on the air-water interface, but these things dove quite deeply into the water, and they were very active predators. Some of them grew to very large sizes. In fact, there's a famous one called Lemmy-Sucus, named after Lemmy, the drummer for, was it not Black Sabbath, it's the other one, because it was a huge, fierce crocodile, about 10 metres long, with massive teeth and massive jaws. This plesiosaur, of course, is about probably 5 or 6 metres long. We have other plesiosaur bones we found last year, which are consistent in size with it being a single individual.
Oh, that's
so we can't say yes, they all came from the same
Yeah.
animal, but if they came from the same animal, this is what we would expect.
Right.
So obviously we don't want to go too far on saying it's one animal, but I think as soon as we put this together, that's one animal.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So would this be an apex predator in this particular ecosystem?
No, the apex predators would have been what we call the pliosaurs, which were massive marine predators. The most famous recent one is the one which the Steve Etchers Museum is excavating from Dorset. You may have seen it in the press, it's got a lot of press. The skull of that one is 1.8 metres long. There's a slightly bigger one in Dorset Museum, which is my favourite because I helped to describe it, which is slightly bigger and slightly more massive. But Steve may argue with me on that. But these were animals with skulls 2 metres long, with huge, powerful jaws. And we very commonly find bones of the long-necked plesiosaurs. This animal is probably something called Cryptoclydus or possibly Marinosaurus. We often find bones of, especially Cryptoclydus, with bite marks on them, obviously inflicted by a large pliosaur.
Okay, so how much, or how many, should I say, bones and parts of bones and things do you need to be able to identify this to species, potentially identify it to species? And what would be, the defining features?
To identify this at species level, I'd like to see the limb bones. So the humeri, the forearm bones, are quite distinctive in Cryptoclydus especially. And the other thing I'd like to see skull material, which is obviously hard to come by. Sorry, I have a spider.
We have a money spider
I have
here.
a
This
spider.
is part of filming live in the field.
I have
Yes.
a spider. The other thing that is the skull, which is they're hard to find because the skull bones of plesiosaurs are quite fragile and they're not very heavily built, so they tend to fall apart. But if we can find some skull bones, that will also help identify what species it is.
Well, this is really exciting then.
Yeah, it is very exciting. And I think it changes our picture of what's happening in that river channel, because it means it's not just a random jumble of bones coming down. It means it's taking effectively pockets of bones and bringing them down all at once. So somewhere upstream there was a plesiosaur coming out of the clay, and it got washed down and it's ended up here.
Because it must have had some sort of flow to it to actually move some of the bones.
Yes,
And it did.
and also if you look, they're being quite bashed up. So I think it was quite turbulent. So they were smashed around quite a lot. But on the other hand, they weren't in the water for very long, because although they're slightly worn, they're not very worn.
Right.
So they were not in the water for a very long time, but they were in very violent water, which smashed the bones up.
And we have sieves on site, and so we'll take you down and we'll look at the sieves in another video. So please keep following our videos. The hashtag is TussForce. And we've got sieves on site where they are sieving from various material as well, which potentially, if there's any teeth or anything like that.
Yes, we did find a single plesiosaur tooth last year, which excited me an awful lot because it was slightly flattened on one side. Now that may not sound much, but we are looking at what we call the Callaway's Formation, which sits underneath what we call the Oxford clay. The Oxford clay we know very well because there are huge brick pits all over the East Midlands and East Anglia, where the huge quantities of bricks of clay has been extracted to make bricks. The Callaways we know very little about because the pits don't go down that far, partly because there isn't decent clay there, but also if they go down to pits, their pits flood, so they try to avoid it. So we have very few marine reptiles of any sort from the Callaways. However, there is a specimen in Scunthorpe Museum, there's a specimen over in private collection, which is definitely from the Callaways, and where the teeth are slightly flattened on one side, which is something you don't see in the Oxford clay plesiosaurs. So we know, possibly not this one, but possibly there is certainly a new and undescribed species of plesiosaur from the Callaways. So one of the things we're hoping to find here is more plesiosaur bones we can definitely say are in the Callaways.
Well, you're on it's happening.
We're on a roll.
Yeah, definitely. Well, keep watching, because this is the sort of thing we're having, really exciting new finds, and what they're doing is not necessarily answering questions, they're certainly making us ask more questions about this site and what was going on in the area and these different time periods. Richard, thank you so much for showing us these and telling us, you know, all the story behind them. I know you're itching to get back in that quarry. I have dragged poor Richard out to talk to us about these finds because he's the man to do that. And I think you are now probably very keen to get back down there, find more of your plesiosaur.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for telling us about them.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.